It's another brand new edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast, and I do apologize that it has been so long. Unfortunately, Memphis 901 FC hasn't been home for almost a month, so there's not really a whole lot that I could do about that. I've also been out of town refereeing at USYS President's Cup Nationals in Wichita, so even if there had been something to discuss, I don't know that I would have been able to do it, but we're back now, and that's what's important. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. You can find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. And of course, we are part of Bluff City Media. So you can find Bluff City Media on Twitter at BluffCity_media. And then over on Facebook as well, just search 901 Soccer and it'll pop right up, and just search Bluff City Media and it'll pop right up. Of course, with Bluff City Media, you follow along there. You're not just getting all of our excellent content as far as Memphis 901 FC and other soccer things around the city of Memphis. You're also getting Tiger football is coming up. The demolition of the artist formerly known as the Liberty Bowl is underway, and hopefully they are able to get everything necessary done in time for the start of Tiger football season. So you can get a lot of Tiger football coverage with Bluff City Media. Of course, the Grizzlies, Tiger basketball, all of that stuff. We've got you covered. Talking today, Memphis 901 FC gets a win over San Antonio FC at home in front of the largest home crowd of the season, which we will talk about a little bit later on. Some new signings. Memphis 901 FC is very shorthanded, so the arrival of these new signings could not have come any sooner. So we'll talk about that. Got a couple more home games this month, so you'll be seeing a lot more of these shows coming up, which is a very good thing, both for me and for you. And, of course, you know, the summer of soccer has rolled on. The Olympics are underway. The U.S. men's national team is looking for a new head coach, thank God. I don't know that I can take all the credit for that, but I do believe I am going to have to take some of the credit for that. And I will maybe, I don't know if we'll have time, but I may touch on who I think the next head coach should be or who I would like to see. So we'll touch on all that. But first and foremost, Memphis 901 FC had a win over San Antonio FC. It is the first ever win by Memphis 901 FC against San Antonio. They previously were 0 wins in 3 games. I think they'd lost all 3 games. They'd lost earlier this year in San Antonio, close one, 1-0, nothing to hang your head about. And then, of course, we all remember the unfortunate beatdown that took place at AutoZone Park last year, 4-0 at the hands of San Antonio. That came on the heels of a national TV embarrassment against Phoenix the week before for that game to finish 6-0. So you got outscored 10-0 in back-to-back games. So that was definitely a low point of the last couple of years, but we're well past that now. No sense dwelling on the past. Things are much better now. We beat them. We beat them, and we were very shorthanded. Surprisingly, San Antonio was kind of down, or not quite cellar dwellers, but almost down in 11th place out of 12 teams in the conference. Surprising because they're typically one of the top flight organizations in the league. And I think it also goes to speak to just how tight the race in the Western Conference is. It's something Coach Glass mentioned at media availability on Thursday. Somebody, I believe from Channel 5, asked him, how often do you look at the table? And he said, you know, we always like to say that we don't look at the table, but we look at it every week. And I'm thinking, well, yeah. I mean, that's something everybody knows. You always have to say, well, we're not looking at it. We're just focused on ourselves, which has been a theme of 901 FC this year. And I think that has paid pretty decent dividends. You don't worry about what everybody else is doing. You focus on making sure that you can be as good as you possibly can be. And we're in line for a home playoff game. So I don't think anybody's going to argue with that philosophy right now. But Coach Glass, I did find this interesting. You know, sometimes we'll tell the players what the standings will look like. You know, if they're thinking, hey, you know, if they're feeling kind of down, it can say, look, all we need is 1 or 2 bounces, and we're right up back in there in 2nd or 3rd place. But if they're feeling like they're gonna, you know, kind of run away from everybody, it says, hey, only 1 or 2 games, and we're on the outside looking in. I thought that was very interesting. A nice little I don't know what the word you want to use for it, but I thought that was an interesting little tidbit that Coach Glass shared with us on Thursday, that we look at the table, but so it's almost reverse psychology maybe, where if you're a little too high, you can go, hey, let's reel it in because it's only going to take 1 or 2 games and it could all fall apart. Or if you're feeling down, you can go, look, this race is tight. 1 or 2 good results, and we're right back in the thick of things. So I liked that. And you took care of business at home and got 3 points against the team down in the towards the very bottom of the table. It wasn't pretty by any stretch of the imagination. It was kind of a slog. Did not look. They looked like they were really struggling to connect passes at one point in the first half. And Knight Pickering took an absolute no-hoper of a shot that took a deflection. It fell very nicely for Samuel Carriaga, and he just let it rip. And I swear, I think that's 4 goals for him on the season for 901 FC, and I'm pretty sure at least 3 of those 4 have been like goal of the week candidates. He had that free kick against Loudon. He had this one against San Antonio. I know he had one earlier. I don't remember if it was against Rhode Island or Colorado Springs or maybe Pittsburgh during that stretch in late May, early June. But he scored one in there that I'm pretty sure was a worldie. All he does is score bangers. So he may not get a ton of them, and that may not be what his purpose on this team is. But when he does, they're beauties, and I don't think anybody's going to be upset about that. But you also have to look at it. There were some new signings in the team, and I think the new signings acquitted themselves very well, especially Tristan Henry in goal. The first 2 minutes of the game, he was not. I don't know that he had to make any saves. But he was called into action. He made good decisions. I thought was not afraid to come off his line and go up and challenge for a ball. And he paid the price for it once or twice. And luckily the referee was there to call the foul and say, all right, we're coming out. But I thought Tristan Henry did very well in the second half. Like I said, before I get to the second half, those having to make those decisions very early on in a game, I thought was very important. I'm not a goalkeeper or goalkeeper coach, so I may be talking out of my ass here completely, but I thought it was important for him. New team, new stadium, new league, new country, all of that stuff to get settled in like that so early on in the game. I thought was pretty important, and he played very well. I thought you get to the second half, he has a point blank diving save. He had 2 key saves in the second half. One of them was, I don't know how San Antonio didn't score here. They absolutely should have. It's one of those ones where you say that like any drunk at the bar could say, oh, I could have scored that. Like all you got to do, tap it, stick your foot out, tap it, and it's in. And Henry got down and it was like a diving kick save, and his leg came up. I don't want to do the diving kick save here because I'll fall out of my chair and make a fool of myself. But that was impressive. And then there was one in stoppage time where he went leaping up and put a shot over the bar, because that was one that was destined for the top corner, and he was able to keep that out and keep the clean sheet and get the 1-0 win. John Baccaro, also new signing, from former teammate of Bruno Lapa's in college at Wake Forest, which could be important next week when it's college night at 901 FC at AutoZone Park. And Coach Glass specifically mentioned that he thought his hold-up play was really good. And, he did have to get subbed out at the end of the game, and we'll talk about who came on for him in just a second. But the one thing, we were sitting in the press box, his arrival was on such short notice, a little bit tongue-tied there. His arrival was on such short notice that his jersey was, I think, about 2 sizes too big. It looked like the 2006 World Cup out there. Remember back in the day, 18 years ago, which is crazy to say because I remember watching so much of that World Cup like it was yesterday, and it's almost 20 years ago, which is wild. But those jerseys were so big. Now you're lucky if these jerseys all look like they're painted on almost. And John Baccaro's jersey did not look like that last night, which I was somewhat amused by. Also, he's number 99. That's always you're a mid-season acquisition for sure when you're wearing number 99. But he did very well, I thought. There were 1 or 2, and maybe fitness is just a little bit of a concern. What with him having finished a season and having to jump straight in here, and he went down cramping. There was one play in particular where he went down in the attacking half, and he was very clearly, I think it was cramping the way that he was trying to stretch himself out. And San Antonio was chasing a goal, and we're in, kind of getting late into the second half, and they had no interest in playing the ball out. And then 901 FC got the ball back, and I'm pretty sure I could see both Stephen Glass and Caleb Patterson-Sewell over there in the technical area going, play it out. And 901C didn't have any interest in playing the ball out either. And so Vaquero just got up and got on with it, which I kind of thought was funny. But, new signings, you got them both this week and you played them as soon as they became available. And there's a reason for that. And that reason is because 901FC has been very shorthanded. Caleb Patterson-Sewell has mentioned several times, as, in his capacity as the assistant sporting director, now as the acting sporting director following the departure of Tim Howard, that they have a fairly short list, have a fairly short roster, very small roster. And that's not something that's new for us as 901FC fans. That was a thing under Tim Mulqueen. That was a thing under Ben Pierman. And it's a thing under Stephen Glass now. I think we're all just going to have to get used to that. This is just the way it's going to be. It's almost like the Oakland Athletics and Moneyball circa 2002. We just don't have, we're not going to be spending money like Louisville or Indy or Sacramento or New Mexico. That's just the reality of the situation. So for them to be able to, on an emergency basis, be able to find somebody the way that they have, more power to them for that. But they were very shorthanded coming into the game against San Antonio, and you had two players pick up red cards against Tulsa, Marlon Santos and I think Tulu or AB Sissoko. I think it was AB Sissoko and Marlon Santos were sent off against Tulsa. So of course they had to miss the game. But then you also, Tyler Derrick picked up a knock. There were several other players that Coach Glass mentioned in the postgame. He's like, look, we didn't have hardly any healthy players on the bench this game. And so when he says he's very incredibly proud of the group, not only do I believe him, but also I agree with him, because I am, and you should be too, incredibly proud of that group for as shorthanded as they were, being able to not just get a result, but to get a win. Yes, San Antonio's down kind of in the basement, but you had 15 healthy bodies. You start with 11 and you can make 5 subs, and they made all 5 subs. And one of them, and this is I've never seen this before, and this is absolutely wild. And this is something that after the game, both John Varlas and I were joking with Stephen Glass. We're like, Coach, if you need somebody, just call us. We'll come down. They had to bring Aaron Seeger in off the bench, and they, I didn't recognize the person going up to the fourth official. We're in stoppage time. You're trying to maybe burn a little bit of extra time, and and John Vaquero's out of gas, so you got to get him off the field. And they put the board up, and 99's coming off, and 26 is coming on. So I'm looking, who's 26? I'm like, Aaron Seeger. I don't recognize that name. Goalkeeper. Oh, okay, that's why I don't recognize. Goalkeeper. Wait, what? We're bringing, and I look, and he's changed completely out of his goalkeeper kit, shorts and all, which is important. And he's got a blue jersey on and blue shorts on, and he comes running on, and I'm like, we're really, and they announced it over. I was like, maybe 26, maybe the fourth official screwed up or something, and they announced it. Aaron's leaving the game for Memphis 901FC. John Vaquero coming into the game for Memphis 901FC. Number 26, Aaron Seeger. Everybody's looking around. Whoa, wow, this is happening. Okay, and we're using a goalkeeper as a substitute, as a field player. I've seen field players have to be goalkeepers before. You're out of subs and the goalkeeper gets sent off, so he's got to go, and you just throw a field player on. I think Mike McGee for the LA Galaxy in 2012 saved a penalty. I think Donovan Ricketts was sent off for dog-so, which is not a thing anymore for goalkeepers in the area. And Mike McGee puts on the gloves, puts on the jersey, and saves the penalty. So I've seen that happen before. I have not seen a goalkeeper come on as a field player while the starting goalkeeper is still on the field. We will occasionally see the goalkeeper come up and try to score in stoppage time, which we saw in Knight Pickering was up for goal of the week in week 1, but I think it was Sacramento's goalkeeper scored a stoppage time equalizer. And I think that won goal of the week. And if it didn't, maybe it should have. But this was crazy, and he made a good run or two, put some pressure as they were playing the ball back to the keeper, put some pressure on. He didn't have a jersey number, which I thought was kind of interesting. But if the fourth official says you're good to go, that's on the referee crew. That's not on you. So That was crazy. So very impressive for 901 FC, as shorthanded as they were, to not just get a result, but to get a win against the team that has caused problems for them in the past. So that was very impressive. And there was a good crowd on hand to see it. The attendance last night was 3597. It's the largest crowd of the season so far for Memphis 901 FC. And in fact, it's the largest crowd for a Memphis 901 FC home game dating all the way over a year. Excuse me. Dating all the way back to July of last year against Orange County. And, my refrain has been, if you'll recall, early in the season when the results were not great, I said, guys, it's going to be okay. It is not going to be time to panic until May. If they're still playing like this and still losing all these games in a row in May, then it's time to start asking questions. But I think they did a really good job building this roster in the offseason. And I think it's just going to take time for it to pay off. And then lo and behold, starting April 27th at Birmingham and going all the way through, the end of June, they lost one game in 2.5 months. So I was like, let's calm down. Everything's going to be okay. And on performance-wise, it has turned out that not everything has been okay, but it has gotten much better, and we're currently sitting with a home playoff place. The attendance, I said, look, it's not great, but I've liked a lot of the stuff they're doing off the field. They are really making an effort to not only be more visible in the community, but to make sure to post on their socials that they're doing stuff out in the community. They've gone to schools. They had the watch party for the road game against Detroit, which I know we have been begging them to do for years. And it just so happened that, probably wouldn't have been able to do that if the game had been at 7:30 like it was supposed to be. But Detroit City's women's team had a playoff game, and they made that the primetime game and moved the 901 FC game up to 3:30 in the afternoon, which is perfect time to have a watch party for a road game. So they did that, and by all accounts, it went very well. So kudos to them for that. They've gotten out into the schools. They do trash pickups, and they're making sure to post it to all their socials. That's something that, we've been, maybe me more than anybody, or I more than anybody, have been critical of them for, look, if you're going to tell us that you're doing all of these community events, you need to make it known that you're doing all of these community events. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose. And lo and behold, that's what they've been doing this year. They've been trying. The effort is there. Can they be doing more? Absolutely. But the effort, what it is now compared to what it used to be, is night and day. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. And it I won't say paid off handsomely, but the crowd, it's the largest crowd of the year. I think the fact that it's a fireworks night, which is something else that I think they deserve plaudits and commendation for, the fact that they're trying to do stuff to get more people to come to the games, doing stuff like post-game fireworks. And post-game fire, folks, let me tell you something. Pyrotechnics are expensive. So for them to be doing post-game fireworks, and I think you as a city need to reward them for those efforts and get down to AutoZone Park all day, every day, that sort of thing. I also think the fact that we're kind of still in the summer of soccer, we'll touch on that in a minute, has helped. After I think it was the Phoenix game, and the crowd wasn't great for that. And I said, we're getting close to time to panic, but it's not time to panic just quite yet. If we get through the 3 games in August and there's not noticeable progress, and, 3,500 people long-term, not gonna get it done, but 3,500 people compared to, the 2,700 that you've been averaging this year, give or take, that I think represents progress. And I think that is a culmination of all of the stuff that they have been doing off the field, and the fact that the summer of soccer has been all over the place. U.S. men's national team notwithstanding, courtesy of one Gregory Berhalter, who no longer gets to inflict pain, suffering, and misery on us. But there are 2 more home games this month for Memphis 901 FC before football season starts. Because once football season starts, it's always a dicey proposition. You generally need to hope that the Tigers are out of town or have a bye week. But 2 more home games. You got next Saturday against El Paso. It's college night. Not 100% sure what that's going to entail, but I'm sure they'll let us know this week. And then you have Saturday, August 17th against FC Tulsa, revenge game after last Saturday. Both those games kick at 7:30. Those are the two last 7:30 p.m. kicks this season. The 4 remaining home games, once you get into September and October, are at 7 p.m. So I think next Saturday's crowd could match or surpass this past Saturday's crowd. And there's a couple of reasons for that. A, there's nothing else going on. B, Saturday night, 7:30. Not a fireworks game, unfortunately, but it is college night. So who knows how many frat boys and sorority girls are going to show up. The more the merrier. It was just not typically the way that I feel about Greek life. But if they're going to show up and fill up AutoZone Park and spend their money on 901 FC, I am all for it. But there's also a 3v3 tournament out at Mike Rose that day, which I will probably be out there refereeing. But it's being put on, like the title sponsor of the event is Cancer Kickers. It's the Cancer Kickers 3v3, of course, the jersey sponsor of Memphis 901 FC. And even several weeks ago, even I believe it was the night of that Phoenix Rising game, I was like, hey, are y'all going to be out there? And was told in no uncertain terms, yes, we're aware. That's our jersey sponsor. We will be there. We have a game that night. So I think, they've done a much better job. They haven't been out there for all the tournaments, but they've been out there for more of the tournaments, including back in March. There wasn't even a 901 FC game that day, but it was the largest tournament in Mike Rowe's history, and Memphis 901 FC made sure to have a presence. It was the largest tournament in Mike Rowe's history. Did I say Memphis 901 FC history? Anyway, largest tournament in Mike Rowe's history. There was not a Memphis 901 FC game that night, and they were still out there. I don't know how many tickets they sold. They sold a lot of merch, is what I heard. It was almost like you see people on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram all the time doing like closet clean out. That's almost kind of what I got. They had a lot of the old green jerseys from 2019, which I wish they would bring back because they were awesome. And they sold a lot of merch, and they said one thing they were maybe a little bit concerned about was it was a lot of out-of-state people. I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot of out-of-state people at these tournaments. But they've made an effort to be out at Mike Rose. I've seen them out there at least twice. There was one tournament I missed, which coincided with the Monterey Bay home game, and I think they were out there that weekend as well. So they've made an effort to be out there. There's a 3v3 next Saturday put on by the team's jersey sponsor. They have said we're going to be there because there's a game that night and because that's our jersey sponsor. And then you got that Saturday, August 17th against FC Tulsa. Plus, you've got, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment, the summer of soccer is still going on here, people. The U.S. men and U.S. women are both competing at an Olympics together for the first time since 2008 in Beijing. And I think that we always like to think that tournaments like Copa America, Euros, World Cup, obviously, Gold Cup, maybe. But that's when people tune in to watch the U.S. national teams, and you hope that when they watch the U.S. national teams, there's kind of that trickle-up effect where it, the rising, as Craig Unger said, a rising tide lifts all ships. And you typically, sometimes you'll see a short-term bump after a World Cup, not so much after 22 or 2018, but especially after 2014, you see a short-term attendance bump for various club teams in the U.S. And I think 901 FC is benefiting from that because at the end of the day, even people who aren't sports fans know about and watch the Olympics. The World Cup is really, that's when the sports fans that aren't soccer fans get into it. The Olympics is when people that aren't sports fans get into sports. It's for the Olympics. And you've got both U.S. teams competing, both U.S. men and U.S. women competing in the Olympics. So I think that also has helped and will help for these next two games. Of course, the U.S. men's team lost their first game to France. Not entirely unexpected, really probably could have done without giving up that third goal, but I wouldn't say they showed their ass by any stretch of the imagination. I had some tweets in the heat of the moment that may have suggested otherwise, but I'm an emotional person. I live and die in the moment. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. But the U.S. women won their first game. The U.S. men bounced back and smashed New Zealand 4-1 in their second game. At the time of recording, this is on a Sunday afternoon. The U.S. women have yet to play their second game. And then by the time this gets posted, they will have played their second game against Germany, and who knows how that'll go. And I think by the time this gets posted, the U.S. men will be in progress in their third game against Guinea. And that's one, if you win and you're in. And they win, they're in. They're on to the next round. And I think getting to the knockout round would be an accomplishment for this team, considering that they hadn't been to the Olympics in 16 years and considering that they didn't bring some of their best U23 players. So I think we can expect, I don't know if we should expect, but we can expect the US U23 men's team to get out of the group. And that'll give us, between now, as in the moment of this recording, now and the next 901FC home game, we'll have hopefully 2 U.S. men's games, and then hopefully 2 or 3 U.S. women's games to kind of keep the cycle and keep soccer at the forefront. I think that is probably going to do it. Just short and sweet today. Not a whole lot to get into. Like I said, the 901FC game last night wasn't a whole lot to write home about. They were shorthanded. They got the win. We should be proud of that. See you back at AutoZone Park next Saturday. And I think that's about all. I've touched on it a couple times. Greg Berhalter fired since the last time we spoke. Oh, I'll tell you what, guys, that was a long week. U.S. Soccer, they broke in, like at halftime of one of the Copa America games, they leaked to Fox. We're going to announce in the middle of next week. So I'm like, okay, is middle of the next week Tuesday or is Wednesday or Thursday? Are we talking, Tuesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, or the 5 p.m. news dump on a Friday? And so it was Wednesday, and it's like Judgment Day. And guys, I'm not going to tell you, I was like sick to my stomach that whole day. It was the least fun Twitter refresh every 5 minutes that I've maybe ever had. Because I knew that they were bringing him back. I was like, they love this dude. They're going to chalk it up. Said, man, if the referee hadn't allowed the offside goal against Uruguay, if the red card hadn't happened against Panama, we would have gone to the quarterfinals and everything would have been hunky-dory. And I'm just sitting there going, this is what they're going to do. They're going to nuke any optimism and momentum that we have for hosting the World Cup in 2 years. And the World Cup in 2 years is our last best hope for soccer to explode in this country. And this is it. It's like it's done. It's not happening. And it was like, any of you out there that are like college football fans, when National Signing Day was still a real thing several years ago, before early signing period and all of that junk, it was like you were on commit watch. It's like, is this kid going to send the fax in, or he's got the 4 hats on the table in front of him? Which hat is he going to put on? Which, by the way, I thought was incredibly stupid, but it made for good TV. And just pick the team, dude. Just pick it. Hey, I'm going to Notre Dame. Hey, I'm going to Alabama. Hey, I'm going to Texas. Just pick one and let's go. That's what that was like for me. I was on commit watch. And when U.S. Soccer leaked to Fox that they were like, hey, Greg Berhalter's not coming back, I'm not going to lie, I may have gotten up and started like dancing in my office, dancing around out of my chair and around my desk and into the lobby. And, I might have done that. I don't know that there's video of that, but I can neither confirm nor deny. I'm just telling you that possibility that might have happened exists. So who do I want? Well, obviously, I want. It was a pipe dream, and it was like pipe dream. Like it was the pipe dream wished it could have been that good of a pipe dream. You're Klopp. Like if you don't think, if you're not at least trying to get Jurgen Klopp, then just blow everything up and burn it down. Is he going to say no? Probably. And if he says yes, is it going to cost you $25 million a year? Probably. You find a way to make that happen. But according to the reporting, they went and said, hey, come coach the team. And he said, thanks, I'm good. I want some time off. Fair enough. So now who do I want? The name that got thrown out there after Klopp said no was Steve Cherundolo. There's a lot to like. He's been very successful with LAFC. He's won a lot. He's much more accomplished of an MLS manager than Greg Berhalter was, which I think says a lot more about Greg Berhalter than it does about Steve Cherundolo. But Steve Cherundolo has won an MLS Cup. He has won. He's won 2 trophies. He won an MLS Cup, and he's been to the CONCACAF Champions League final, and he's been to another U.S. Open Cup final. I think he won a Supporters Shield as well. So he's won 2 trophies and has had the opportunity to win 2 more. What's not to like? Of course, he also was an assistant at Hanover in Germany for years and years and years, after playing there for years and years and years and years. So if that's the pluses, that's the pro column. The con column, he's only in his 4th season as a manager. Okay, he's coming from MLS, which doesn't necessarily disqualify you, but I would like to swing bigger than MLS. This is a home World Cup we're talking about. And then you look at the fact that, like I said, he's only been a manager. He's only in his 4th season. He's only got 3 full seasons under his belt, and one of them was in the USL Championship with the Las Vegas Lights, and he went like 6-27. And now I understand, until this year, everybody did that with the Las Vegas Lights because they were a wholly unstable, terrible-ass poverty organization. I'm not kidding. They had a new manager every single year. This is like their 7th year of existence. They're on at least their 7th manager. Like, you can say what you want about Memphis 901 FC getting a new manager basically every 2 years, and I've had a strange number of people mention that to me, and that was not something that I had even picked up on until it was brought to my attention. I was like, yeah, that's what it looks like. I think they're in a good spot now. I think everything's going to be okay, guys. So just calm down. But no, they every single year for 7 or 8 years, fired. I don't think Steve Cherundolo got fired, but he stunk at LAFC. The flip side of that coin is, who hasn't stunk at Las Vegas Lights? So for me, Steve Cherundolo would be like, if everybody else says no, like everybody, like, and you have backed up the Brinks truck and tried to get XYZ, and you circle back around to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you're all the way back down to like W. Everybody else has said no, then you can do Steve Cherundolo. But he should not be the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th choice, in my opinion. I don't think it would be a disaster, but you need some juice and you need some sex appeal. You're hosting a home World Cup. You need a little bit more than just stable. Which brings me to, here's who I want. They're floating Patrick Vieira. He's never stunk anywhere, but he's never like really been really good anywhere. I mean, he's managed in MLS, he's managed in the Premier League, and he's managed in France twice. They're also throwing Thierry Henry out there. I guess maybe that has sex appeal because he's one of the greatest players of his generation, and he won a World Cup and went to another World Cup final, and like scored goals galore, was really good in MLS with the Red Bulls for 4 or 5 years. I don't know about him as a manager. I don't think there's any evidence that suggests that he's a good manager. And in fact, I think the evidence suggests that he is not a good manager, both with the Montreal Impact and I think Monaco. He's managing France's Olympic team right now, and they beat the U.S., and I hope and pray that's not what makes U.S. soccer's decision. But they didn't look particularly good against Guinea, and I don't know that Thierry Henry would do it for me. I want Hervé Renard. He has managed a variety of levels internationally. He has won at a variety of levels internationally. He won an African Cup of Nations with Zambia. He won an African Cup of Nations with the Ivory Coast. He took Morocco to the 2018 World Cup, the first time they'd been in like 20-something years. He took Saudi Arabia to the 2022 World Cup and upset Argentina in the first game. He took France. He currently manages France's women's team, which is interesting. I feel like we've seen with John Herdman in Canada and Hervé Renard with France now. I don't think it was a regular occurrence where somebody would manage both men's and women's international teams, or have managed at both the women's and men's international level. I think that probably helps, really, more than anything. Not helps more than anything, but it helps more than it does anything else, is what I'm trying to say. That, he's took France to the Women's World Cup and got them to the quarterfinals, I believe, where they lost to the hosts on penalties. and we will see how they do at the Olympics here. But the U.S. doesn't have a game until September. They got 2 in September, 2 in October, and probably 2 in November. They've already got 3 of those games set for MLS stadiums at home. Another lasting legacy of the Greg Berhalter tenure, because he loved Cincinnati and he loved Austin. So I want Hervé Renard. You can get him after the Olympics, which dovetails very nicely to your first national team camp in September. Now, I mean, I would consider him a serial winner, as that's something that Matt Crocker is looking for. You only need him for a year and a half. And I mentioned sex appeal. I didn't mean it in the literal sense. I meant it as in it's going to bring eyeballs to the TVs and butts to the seats and cameras and media attention. But in the literal sense, let's be real. Hervé Renard's a very good-looking dude. If I looked like Hervé Renard, you wouldn't hear me complain about it. So in both the intangible sense and the tangible sense, Hervé Renard's got sex appeal. Okay? So that's who I want. Maybe they get somebody completely and totally random off the wall. I remember during the last search, when they were hell-bent on bringing Greg back and tried to pretend that they ran a search this time, because the players said, we love playing for Greg. Here's the gun at the stem of my head in the hostage video. They leaked that they offered Zidane. That would be interesting. Zidane had a very good managerial tenures, 2 different stints, I think, with Real Madrid, but also it's Real Madrid. I mean, I could manage at Real Madrid and have a good win-loss record. Maybe not to the extent that Zidane did, but I could be like, guys, we're more talented than all but 4 teams in this league. We're going to win a lot of games. Did win the Champions League at least twice. So maybe that's who they're looking at. I don't know. I don't have inside information. I'm just telling you what my gut says. And logically, Hervé Renard makes sense timing-wise, and it also makes sense because he's a serial winner, in my opinion. But that's who I want. But that's going to do it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. Find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. Bluff City Media on Twitter at BluffCity_media. On Facebook as well, 901 Soccer, Bluff City Media. We will be back to talk to you next week after another home game against the El Paso Locomotive.